Thank you for tuning in to part 3 of my Sansui AU-9900 repair and restoration. Today, we'll work at the front of the unit. We'll remove the faceplate, the knobs, and work on the assemblies at the front. So I hope you enjoy it. If you enjoy vintage audio equipment, you've come to the right spot. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell, as well as giving me a big thumbs up if you like this video, and share it with others. There is a risk of serious injury or death from electrical shock working on this equipment. If you're not comfortable with working on the equipment, please do not take the cover off and consult a professional. In parts 1 and 2 of the Sansui AU-9900 restoration, we didn't even need to remove the faceplate. You know, and of course we left the knobs on, and we did a lot of work in this unit without having to remove that. Well, now we've got to work on those assemblies that those knobs are attached to. So we're going to have to remove the faceplate and the knobs, of course, and do the work here that's in the front of the unit. To get to the assemblies that we want to in the front of the AU-9900, which are these guys up here in the front. You can see them. The switches, these just pull straight off, but you can see here that there's a hex screw at the bottom of many of them, and many of the controls up here. You can see there's a hole here, hole here. These are, you need a 2mm hex tool to get these out. So let me show you here. Again, the best way is, again, with this on its left side, right? This is a lot easier than this being flat down. We could move this guy down flat, but then what? You know, then we got to try to get under it. So this is like perfect for us. So let me show you how to get those loose. Okay. As I said, you need a 2mm hex tool. First of all, I'll show you, though, some of the switches, like this one here, which is the tuner switch on the far right of the faceplate. You can tell he's not attached with anything, so he'll pull straight off for you. Now, sometimes these are not easy to get loose, and the tendency is a lot of people will try to use a screwdriver down in between here to pry it. First, of course, just try to pull it off. If it won't come, usually, like in this case, there's about a quarter of an inch, an eighth of an inch of space between this faceplate and this knob we're trying to take off. If you can get your fingers against the faceplate, you know, like in this case, I've got it pushed right in there, and what I'm doing is I've got a little bit of my finger on this switch knob here, right? And so I get a little more leverage on it than trying to pull it out here, right? You know, I try to pull it out here, it may come loose, may not. You just got to try it. Your unit may come off easy, they may come off, you know, maybe more difficult, but if they come right off, great. If they don't, just get your fingers in there as tight as you can, and then give it a pull. There, she came loose, right? So we didn't damage the faceplate, we didn't mar that with a screwdriver. Some people will put a, you know, like a rag or something in here and pry, but you got a lot more danger of hurting something. So this guy here has come right off, right? So that's good, we can put him aside. Now let me show you one where we have to use our hex tool. And again, I've got this on its side because this is perfect, isn't it? And this is easier working. You know, I'm looking right at it, eye level. Again, on these guys, you know, this is a standard hex tool. So first way you want to try it, just to make it easier on you, right, is do it the long way, right? Just hold this guy here and try to turn it. In this guy's case, he came loose. Now, you don't want to force this. If you're having to bend this thing like crazy on the long side, again, I got this on the long side, then you need to turn the tool around, to the short side, because that'll give you a lot more leverage and you've got a lot less chance of stripping that screw. So I'll just show you. We put it in that way now, right? And you got more leverage to get. Some of these are going to be stubborn. This one wasn't. So, you know, it turns extremely easy that way. So I was able to just come here and make it easier on me, because when you're in here on the short side, what do you got to be worried about a little bit too? You have no room here if you're having to crank this. In this one's case, it wouldn't be a big deal, but that can happen. So I'll just, as I said, I got the long end in, and I'm just going to turn it counterclockwise, and you just got to turn a little bit and you can see it move, right? And off she comes. So we're just going to repeat that. I just wanted to show you a couple different kinds here, and these are all the same. Some are going to pull off, some you're going to have to use your hex tool, but they'll all come off. So now I'll do that. I'll take all the knobs off the front. Okay, I've gotten all the knobs off. I've just got the chassis lifted up here so you can see that. And we're ready to take the faceplate off. So first, let's see how it's attached. That's the first thing you want to see. They're all different, but in many ways they're all the same. So if we look at the top here, we see several different screws kind of in a row along the edge here on the top. But, you know, you look at the faceplate and you can see that this black one right here, he looks like he's attached to the faceplate. Come along right here. Now here's a screw that goes to our little chassis for our phono card that we were working on. And I don't think he needs to go anywhere, but maybe he does. We'll see. And this guy here. So there's three here along the top that look like they need to come loose. Now I've got the AU-9900 on its left side again. It seems like where it spends most of its life since we've been working on it. But again, you look here at the screws, it doesn't look like those guys need to come, but there's one right here, a black one, and then there's nothing else down through here. Well, look at that. Maybe, no, that's probably part of the case. I was going to say a screw maybe is missing, but I don't think so. I have to look at that once I get it off. There could be a screw missing here. I'm not 100% sure. And down here, we've got the other one. All right. So we've got at least those two on the bottom here, and the three up at top. I've got the two screws removed from the bottom, and I've laid the 9900 down flat again. And then I'm going to hold the camera here at the same time. Oh, what I wanted to show you, because I can't get every angle that I want to show you. Have the faceplate hanging off your table a little bit. Because if this were up on the table here, it's not going to come off. Even with the screws loosened. You're going to be trying to pull it in the chassis and the whole thing. Not a good idea. So have this hanging off the edge. I've removed the top three screws. We got the ones out of the bottom. Now here's another little tip, and obviously make sure your unit should be unplugged anyway doing this. But you'll have to switch. It'll make it a lot easier if we switch put our power switch even. So it'll come straight off here instead of trying to get it out with it angled down like that. So I think we're in pretty good shape here to try to take it off. I'm going to try to set this guy in my lap. This is one of those things that took a lot of different camera angles, and you know, most of the time I can kind of leave the camera in one spot and work. Not so much with trying to get this faceplate off. So we ought to be loose here. Just take it from the side, or I think we're loose. Okay, and just pull it. Okay, can you see right here? It actually is on the camera. This is something you got to look for. You see this right here? This is the little level set switch here. that works your 0 dB, minus 10, minus 20. See, this is the kind of thing, I didn't know this was here. I should have, right? But this is the kind of thing why you go slow, you know, because this here is obviously a very important piece here. And we'll just put him aside. So that was kind of good that happened. And I think my camera, it's sitting right here on my lap on the tripod. So this should be interesting. Bear with me. Okay, we came loose. Oh, look what we got. I'm going to try to move the camera here just for a second. Well, you know the power protector lead. Hope you're seeing that. I'm just sort of holding the faceplate and holding this too. See, there's a wire there, obviously. And I'm guessing, I can't quite see it. I'm going to have to sit the camera back in my lap. But I think I just, it's probably just pulls off the faceplate here. So bear with me. I'll look over there and see if that's the case. And what do you know? That is the case. So, we're free. You know, the faceplate is free from the chassis now. So I'm holding the faceplate in one hand. There she is. And there's your AU-9900 chassis in front of us. So, all right, well, that's the first thing we needed to do to get here, to get a little bit deeper. So we'll move on from here. Looking in here, like every unit's different. We're going to work on these inside assemblies here that are toward the front of the unit. Almost all of these assemblies, they're attached here at the front, either by a nut. Almost all these shaft type controls, there's a nut down here you have to remove. Almost all the push buttons would be screws. These type of switches here, little toggle switches, these are almost always held in by screws. And you just want to take a look first at what you're going to go after. And many times, you know, you start one end or the other. You start toward the bottom and it gives you a little bit more room. You can see in this guy, we've got a bunch of tie wraps, we've got a bunch of cables. First of all, it looks like there's a couple cables up in here that I would like to remove. This one, I may have to come around from the other side too. I kind of got my other hand. I've got this hand coming in the bottom and the other hand coming in the top. And, okay, she's off. I'm gonna need a socket. And what you do, just loosen, there's three of these. Like I told you, on the shaft, there's three of them. Just a small 1/4-inch socket. Driver works fine. It's not like they're on there very tight. But just loosen these for a second. A little bit. And this guy here. And this one here. Alright, well let's just try that real quick. I think I can get these off with my hand. Let me just do that real quick. Alright, let's see if we can get this guy out of here. Those push button switches, it'll help us if we loosen those up with the other assemblies. So we'll do that. Freeing these guys up have given us a little more room to maneuver. Like most of these units, you just gotta start unhooking it and don't get too crazy. Just see what makes sense to loosen up and keep, you know, evaluating where you're at and what you should do next. Okay, I'm going to now take out the 2573 assembly. Same thing, got a couple nuts up on these shafts to remove, and then we've got a few screws here down below to get that assembly out. Sometimes you got to move stuff around. This one feels like it's loose. I can't quite, it is. Is this going to come out for us? Pretty much, huh? We're got a few side. Well, here comes this guy. That's nice. This is, remember, we were working on this guy. This is where it looked like it had two sides to it. The push button, the guy with the push button switches on it. So that's nice. We got him out. So he's loose. I know sometimes you wonder what the hell's he doing. But anyway, this is out in my hand. What I may do, so yeah, it'll reach all the way to the table. I think, actually, yeah. So I really don't have really any problems there. So geez, we can look through the chassis now. This stuff here was a little more tight, wasn't it? We got a pile over here and a pile over here, and it wasn't quite as easy to get out as you saw in part 1 and part 2 of, let's say, our protection board or our heat sinks and power transistors, or our driver board. All that stuff came out pretty easy, and up top the power supply. And so this came out fine. It actually came out quite nice. It just was tighter. It's a tighter spot in there for all of this stuff. And remember this guy we brought out, right? So several modules, right, to fit in this pretty tight spot. And but we got them all out, and great to know that I can get to them all pretty easily. So we'll get to work changing components. Before I change the components out in each of the assemblies, what better time than to clean all the controls, right? I mean, this stuff is all out here on the table, and we can get in there and clean those controls so they'll operate properly for several more decades. As I said before, you've got to decide on what products to use. There's different ideas of what to use and what to use them on. I can just tell you from experience, I've never had an issue with any of them, any of the dioxit products. I use several different ones. As I said, I've got the liquid variety also of them. Those are used in some spots, but I don't think you can go wrong. I guess if you're going to just buy one spray, the D5 is the spray. If you're going to buy two, get some F5 too. But you know, as I said, I never had an issue, so I'll go ahead and clean those guys up, and then we'll start changing components. Probably the biggest mistake when people are cleaning controls, after spraying deoxit into them, they just don't exercise them enough. Once again, I know this will sound ridiculous, but you've got to do these back and forth and back and forth. You've got to do them 50 times to be sure. Could you maybe just spray something in there and turn it once or twice and get lucky? Sure you could. But the first time that you disassemble a unit like this to this level and you get it back together and you've still got a noisy, let's say in this case I'm doing the volume control, right? And you've got a little static, you know, that's like a normal thing that you'll have in these old units. And so you get in here, you clean it, you put it back together, and you still got static. And 98% of the time, that's going to be because you didn't exercise these controls enough. And you just want to overdo it. And I'm telling you, it's a very good idea. Guess how I learned it? Because when I first started doing this, I thought, you know, give this guy here a spray, spray down in here, spray down in here, spray. And I don't know, you know, 3-4 times, that should do it, right? No. Just don't do that. You've taken all this time to get this apart. You just want to do it right. So when you get it back together, you won't be back in here ever again. So just do it more times than you think you should. As I said, about 50 or so. And that'll make sure that you get these things cleaned up, all the controls cleaned up properly. Okay, I'm going to start changing capacitors on the F2573, which is the filter circuit board. What I want to show you though real quick, I mean I just thought about this, I just showed you a little bit about the use of deoxit, but here's a great use for liquid deoxit. There's the D100, comes in a bottle. Just take a couple drops, maybe 3, on the end of a Q-tip, and what a great way to clean these pins down through here. You don't need much. You know, you can get in there and clean these pins up. Once again, this unit's 45 years old. Why not do this while you're here? Takes you all of a minute, right? And so that's a great use for liquid deoxit. All right, so let's get started with the capacitors. The 2573 filter board has only a couple capacitors in it, a couple bipolars. And again, we're going to use Nishinikans. I've used those before, but if you got another favorite brand, just use a name brand and they'll work good for you. So let's get started. Okay, we've got the two 3.3 microfarad bipolar caps changed out. So this board, the F2573 filter board, is all ready to go. So we'll go to the next one. This is the 2576, which is the tone, bass, and treble board. Looks like the same thing. Looks like we've got maybe I think those are all bipolars. Yep, so we got 4 more bipolar capacitors to change, and we'll do that now. On this board, on the 2576, soldering and desoldering's a little bit more complicated because you've got all these wires that are soldered on the back, and some of the leads that we need to get to are pretty much where these wires want to lay down. Okay, we've got the 4 bipolar capacitors changed out with the new Nishinikans. So the 2576 bass treble controls all set to go. We'll work over here closer to the chassis on the, you may have recalled a couple of the assemblies wouldn't come all the way out, and there's only a couple of wires attaching them, so no big deal. We still got plenty of room to work on them. One's the F2574 buffer amp, and the other, this one here, is the F2575 tone mid-range control board. Four bipolars changed out of the F2575 assembly, and we'll go on to the next one, which will be the 2574. The 2574 buffer amp assembly has 2 bipolars, another a pair of 3.3 microfarad 25 volt bipolars, and on this board there are 2 10 microfarad 50 volt electrolytics, so we'll change those 4 out now. Got the 2574, the 4 capacitors changed out, 2 electrolytics, and 2 bipolars. So I think we're about ready here to start reassembling. We've got all the capacitors changed out, and we'll start putting everything back in the chassis. We've changed out our capacitors from the boards at the front of the AU-9900, and we're ready to fill this empty space back in again. So we pretty much go in reverse. What we would start with, this was the last module we took out, right? This was the volume control, and it sits way at the top of the chassis here, up here. So that's where we want to start and just work our way through it. Gonna try to make a connector sandwich here. Remember the mid, this is kind of the way it goes more or less, right? When it's up in the, when it's in the chassis. Bass and treble are on this one. The mid-range is on this one. So I'm hoping I can kind of hold this together. That's my hope. These guys, I'm not really worried about, you know, getting them in there. There's a lot of slack in these. If I can get this piece in, I feel pretty good that I can probably get the others in. But as we saw taking it apart, it was pretty darn tight, right? So I don't know here what we're gonna run into. There's the mid. I've got the mid in the front. I think I've got the, hey, all three popped in. I mean, that's a good sign. I mean, sort of popped in. All right, are you not jammed up anyway? No, that's all right. And we know where that guy goes. Okay, well, I'll take that. See, again, if you worked on these every day, right? I mean, this is only 9900 I've ever worked on. I'm sure there's a proper way, you know, there's a system, like everything. But, you know, all these units are similar. You know, you're going to run into something like this on every unit. It won't be the same thing. You know, it'll be something different. All right, I've got everybody snugged up there in the front of the chassis. Let's start putting some of these on. And he's turned, oh man, look at that. See, this can happen too. I was thinking like, what's going on there? It wasn't going on, right? I mean, this is just one of these simple things. But see this resistor? When I had the module out, right, he got bent. And he got bent up into the connector. So I guess, you know, the point is, if something doesn't go on, you know, fairly easy, you know, you're sitting there going, what's going on here? There's something wrong. We want to give it one final look, make sure we've got everything back in neatly. You know, fortunately, we didn't have to cut a lot of the original tie wraps, you know, which is always nice. You know, is it a big deal? If you got to cut them, you got to cut them. We had to cut some before, as you recall. But if you can leave those original ones, I don't know. I just think it's kind of cool if you can do it. So I tightened up everything here. Let me give you some light here. You can see we've got everything tightened up at the front. So, you know, the next thing we do, we're going to, you know, we're going to see if it'll power up. You know, we're going to give it one final check, make sure it looks like we got everything back together right, and then we're going to give it a try. Okay, we've got everything back assembled, and what do? We've got to give it a try. So I've moved in my trusty CD player here, and we're going to give it a shot and then see if it's still working. And you should always do this when you work on a section. And well, let me come around here to the front. This time we have no faceplate, so we don't really have any LED indicator, but let's hope we hear a little bit of that speaker relay noise. So I'm down here on the power switch, and here we go. Okay, well, that's a good first sign. And let's see what we got. Let me... CD running? Yeah, okay. Well, this is our volume. Let's see what happens. Well, once again, as you know, real quick test there. I could tell the left and right channel were working. I'll test it a little bit closer. This completes the part 3 of my Sansui AU-9900 repair and restoration. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I would really appreciate a big thumbs up down below. I'd really appreciate that like. And I'd also appreciate any of you guys that are not subscribers. I certainly would appreciate it if you gave it a thought and became a subscriber if you'd like to see more videos like this. And you guys out there who are presently subscribers, I really thank you very much. And I'll keep trying to make quality stuff for you. Thanks again, and y'all have a good day.